And Mr. Shaw will be flattered, I'm sure, to know that he was one that was highlighted at the beginning of our semester as a unique presentation because Burns Saddlery is the, I had him guess how old this company would be. It's the oldest that we've ever had speak. A lot of times we'll have the founder of the company, and that was their first clue. I said the founder isn't around anymore. That kind of gave them a clue. Burns Saddlery is the oldest same family-owned Western retail business in the world. So, 141 years old. Braydan Shaw, our guest presenter today, is a sixth generation owner and president of the company. He comes from a long line of creative artisans, craftsmen, so entrepreneurship is in his blood, and so is the cowboy spirit. And he is here today with his wife, Misty. Misty, you want to raise your hand so they know who you are? Great. Miles Burns, 6 generations ago, was a founder of Burns Saddlery. And I'm not going to give all that history about it, but I just mentioned that so that you know that as a harness maker and a blacksmith, he started this company, developed some unique things, invented a type of a pack bag, and from there grew this business through several generations that have adapted with additional products and services through the years. Braydan began the business stocking shelves and dusting when he was very young, fixing the family fence, or the fence on the family horse farm, and shipping products and doing other things like that. And he loved hats. And he's got the nicest hat in the room today. He would sit with a Jiffy steamer and pile of install hats and work those and play with those and develop his love and talent. And at the age of 20, he introduced a new line of Burns branded hats to the store, and they grew to where they'd have nearly 1,000 hats in the store. And so even though he is the president of the company, and that requires a lot of his attention and time, what he has a passion for, I understand, is hats. So we invite him today to share that passion for entrepreneurship and share the story of their business. We please extend a warm welcome to our guest speaker, Braydan Shaw.
Thanks, Alan. You hear it okay?
Yeah.
As Alan mentioned, I'm part of Burns Saddlery, or Burns 1876, which is the parent company. There's a lot of sister companies involved. And we did fail to mention I do have 5 daughters, and sometimes running 9 companies is a lot easier than a household of 5 daughters. So entrepreneurship gives me a little break from that every once in a while. As he mentioned, I came from a long line of entrepreneurs who have, as I've researched and learned a lot of their history, taught me a lot of valuable lessons that helped us grow and adopt and adapt the business in a changing climate. So what is Burns 1876? He mentioned Burns Saddlery. It's really one umbrella company, Burns 1876, and as 9 or so sister companies, we'll talk about 6 of them today, but as Burns Saddlery, which has roots for the 141 years, has the original lineage and the original business that started. Burns Cowboy Shop, Burns Custom Hats, Sunset Trails, Burns Events, and Shop Talk Magazine. And then we've created a management company, a business management company that manages all the different operations and does employee leasing and things like that. So we'll start with Burns Saddlery. As Alan mentioned, that's been around since 1876. And it's the oldest same family-owned Western retail store in the world. And it represents what we call horseman retail. We have 2 different segments of retail. And this, our main clients are core road athletes, professional athletes. And we're in a transition currently, so we're really evolving right now. If you were to go into our shop, which is located in Atlanta, Utah, 2 years ago, it would be a fully functioning Western department store. So we had 10,000 pair of boots, thousands of jeans and clothing, and hundreds of saddles on the rack, and it was really a department type store. And it's totally evolved. About 5 years ago, the e-commerce and the internet started taking hold of our industry, and you became we were selling a lot of products online, and there were a lot of competitors selling online, manufacturers were selling online. So we embraced that change, and we started and developed an online platform to move our products. And we spent about $100,000 developing a custom website that tied in with eBay and Amazon, and we were about ready to launch and really start pushing this platform. And it got down to it, and we were getting close to launching, and we decided this seems like a race to the bottom for us. It doesn't seem like what we're passionate about. So we scrapped the whole thing. So we walked away from it, and we went a different direction. And now, just a few years later, you'll walk into our shop, and it's all craftsmen. So we've went to a handmade, artisan type, campus style environment in our Salina location, where artists can collaborate with master artisans, and we have a lot of young apprentices that come and learn the crafts. And now we've marketed that. We went from 8 or 10 full-time sales staff on a retail environment and then an e-commerce team to now we have 0 sales staff and 21 independent brand reps all over the nation pushing our saddles mainly, and our hats and our belts and our buckles. But now we have 200 saddles in queue. So we're really busy, and it's really paid off for us. It's really marketing what we want to do. We stepped out of the box, and we decided to not go with the norm and not try to do largest selection, lowest price anymore. Because at one point, Salina was a destination for large selection and low price. Like I said, we were a town of 1,800 people and had 10,000 pair of boots. So we drew from a really large area. And that's how it's evolved now. It's really pushing its core product is saddles. We do make some tack and shap and things like that. But it's really the hardcore equestrian that is our main customer. And we have Burns Cowboy Shop. Burns Cowboy Shop is about 10 years old. And we started that as a need to really showcase our top shelf product. So we have 2 locations, one in Park City and one in Carmel, California. Their core customer are really high net worth clients that are on vacation. So we're able to showcase our really top shelf goods. We stock products like $10,000 alligator backpacks and $50,000 saddles, and we really put the art into it. So our craftsmen are able to use the highest quality materials available and really stretch their limits and create some really amazing stuff. And we've got a lot of notoriety, and we've developed some customers that are collectors that want to pass our stuff down for generation. And that's been a great move for us. It just gives us a totally different market to market to. And in retail, it's all about selling days. So Park City has a winter season because of ski season, and Carmel has the summer and fall season. So that's why you may say those are 2 unique locations for cowboy stuff. But we're really targeting high net worth clients that attach to our type of quality, and we wanted more selling days. And then we have Burns Custom Hats. As Alan mentioned, this was my passion, and it was started about 6 years ago with a truck full of old equipment and a lot of enthusiasm. So a buddy and I decided, hey, we can do this. We've carried hats for a long time, but we wanted to start making them. So we had 45 minutes training and just a zest to learn and to really grow that into something. And we had a strong passion and enthusiasm about it. Actually, our second hat we ever sold was $1,000. And by no means was a $1,000 hat, but we were confident and I guess a little naive. But now we manufacture over 1,000 handmade custom hats, and we ship them all over the world. The next lane, which is pretty recent to us, is Sunset Trail Silver, and it's a nostalgic business that's not been in my family only but 2 years, but it's been around for almost 100 years. It was started in the 20s and set next to the MGM studio. So a lot of the old-time Western movies, these guys did all the silver work. So built the Lone Ranger's gun belt and a lot of stuff for John Wayne and really nostalgic stuff. And we had known the Stanton family for many years and done business with them for generations. And the 3rd generation inherited the business and really didn't have a zest for it, so it was going downhill. And we offered to purchase it, to revive it, and packed up 58,000 pounds of old silversmithing equipment and moved it to Salina to where now it sits next to our saddle shop and our hat shop. And it really makes the highest quality solid sterling, solid gold buckles on the market. And then we have an events company. So we promote Western events, barrel races, rodeos, mainly focus on barrel races. My sister she's sixth generation in the business also and is a professional barrel racer, and she promotes the event. So across the West Coast, we put on 4 major barrel races a year that pay out over $250,000 a weekend. And it's been very economically beneficial for us to put on these events because the events company buys awards from our saddle shop, from our hat shop, from our silver shop. Plus we put on a trade show, a massive trade show where we bring our wares and we sell them to the customers. We also control the advertising and the marketing that goes on at the event, so we're always promoting our products and getting people to stop by our booth. So that's another lane we do. They say you need to do 10 things to make it in a small town, and we're to 9, so we're almost to make it. And then lastly, a new adventure is Shop Talk magazine. And it's a monthly trade publication we put out for the leather and craftsman, hardware, and other craftsmen. And this magazine is a monthly periodical. It's really specific. It's in 11 countries, but it really just targets shops. It's for people who are actually doing stuff, building crafts, and it really catered toward them. In every magazine you'll find a feature on a craftsman, a discovery section where they can learn about new products, a showcase section where we're showcasing really high-end, high-quality products, a skills section where they can learn a new skill, a knowledge section where they can receive business advice. A lot of our readership are small businesses, so they're small 1 or 2 or 5 man shop. So business advice really helps them. So we have a business advice article, and interesting enough, 20% of our readership is actually Amish. So that's a new market for us that we're dealing with and we're learning about and learning a lot of their craft. So that's been a lot of fun. Its main revenue source is advertising. As you can guess, there's not a lot of mediums for equipment manufacturers to get to their target audiences, and this is one of the only ones. So it's fairly lucrative business because we're kind of the only game in town. It's a small niche market, and we cater to that core group. So in a nutshell, that's what Burns 1876 is. It's a lot of sister companies, has one passion and vision, and it's always to embrace and drive change and to look for opportunities and to take them and really elevate the level of our company. I've been fortunate, like Alan said, to be from a long line of entrepreneurs, and they've all been super supportive of the next generations following their passion. And you'll see as we talk about it, there's a lot of lessons I've learned from the generations before me that I want to convey. But, and they've all made the company to where it is, take it to the level I wanted to take it to. Where it started, as Alan mentioned, Miles Lamonie Burns was the first generation entrepreneur. And he was actually born in Winter Quarters, Nebraska, and came across the plains with the Mormon pioneers when he was a youth. His father left and went back to Illinois, so he came up settling an area by Capitol Reef, so the Torrey area, and they were there until he was 13 years old. He decided to strike out on his own, and he took the Burns name. He went by Miller until then, and he took the Burns name when he was 13. And he had a dream of owning. So he went to work doing day cowboy work, any kind of laboring he could do. And in the evenings he worked on his leather work. And it grew and progressed. And over 7 years he worked and he saved a lot of money until he was able to open up his first shop. And during that time, saving and working on, he did some great things. He honed his craft. He didn't just wait for the money to come. He was always working on bettering his skills. He actually traded work with Butch Cassidy when Butch Cassidy would come through the southern part of the state. So he would trade repair work for hand-braided whips. Not many people know Butch Cassidy loved to braid. So we have a whip that Butch Cassidy braided my great-great-grandfather. And by the age of 20, Miles had saved enough money to open up shop. And I think this was an important lesson to me as an entrepreneur and starting some of these new businesses. He didn't come from a lot of means. He didn't have a financial backing, but he had hard work and he had time. So if any of you are interested in starting a business and jumping out on your own, you don't need to wait for the funding to come in. There's little things you can do every day to be successful. And he did whatever it took. You know, he worked the 9 to 5, if you will, and then he worked afterward on his business until he was able to start it. And I think that's a great lesson, and it's one that we've adopted. We've bootstrapped and started quite a few ventures. Some work and some don't, but if you put in the time, you can make it happen. And it took him 7 years to become an overnight success. When he started his business, it quickly grew. He ended up with 7 sewers. He invented a pack bag for the US government that kept them really busy called the Utah-style panniard. And it really took off. But that overnight success from the outside looking in was really 7 years in the making. So if that's one lesson we can learn from him is to stick with it. Everything doesn't have to line up, but doing the little things every day will add up until you can be a success. And put in the is always instilled in us is a hard work ethic. I'm sure that he put in 80, 100 hours a week work on his project, and that's what helped it grow. And that's one thing that I've adopted in my life. If I can work 80-hour work weeks and my competitor's working 40, in 6 months I've done what they're going to do in a year, and in 5 years we're way past. They can't even see us anymore. So that's one thing. Part of our coal culture is hard work, and we learned that from Miles. Just put in the work, do the important things every day, and he was a success. And he grew the business to be really something great for the little small town. He was a major employer, had people coming from all over the state, and was doing things with the government. Then we moved to second generation. So it was 1898, and Utah was just a state. So they just became a state that year. And the second generation was in the business. This photo is of him at 19 years old. And at 19 years old, he saw that just north of the little town of Lowell, where the shop was, there was a town called Salina, where we reside now. And that was booming and bustling. So that town wasn't even there when Lowell was settled, but now it was starting to become a hub, and there was more and more people there. And he saw opportunity. And he wanted to move to Lowell. So he started looking, and it didn't look like it was going to be able to happen. He had a good established business, and but Salina was booming, so there was not much access to lumber or builders or anything like that, and he didn't have the means probably to buy a new building. And all this time, everyone was saying, "You're crazy, just stick with what you've got." But he saw an opportunity, and he wouldn't be swayed. And I think that's another important lesson for entrepreneurship is don't let people talk you out of your ideas. I'm sure that there are many people that told him to stay, but he had a passion and he went after it. And a lot of those people were family members. And I think that'll happen to us all in our lives. Our family members don't want us to fail. They don't want to talk you out of doing something to be great, but they don't want you to get hurt. So they think they're protecting you and trying to sideline you from getting hurt. But Miles, Viv pushed past that. So he pushed on, and he didn't have the means to buy a building or build a building. So what did he do? He got a block and tackle, and he jacked his building up, and he put logs under it. And he rolled that building 60 miles over the Fish Lake National Forest to Salina. So he had just incredible determination. He knew what he wanted to do, and he struck out to do it. And it took him all summer. I'm sure that there was a lot of doubt during the summer. I'm sure that things didn't go smoothly, and he probably thought about relocating at Fish Lake, which is halfway, but he kept going. And this was taken in November of 1898. So it took him all summer, and this was his opening day in November of 1898 in his new location. And the location continued to grow there and evolve, and he become the same thing. He was one of the biggest employers in the area and was doing more commerce and adding new product mixes So one lesson that we've learned from him as a family is to, just push on. If you're passionate about it, let's make it happen. And then third generation, his son Vern came into the business. And by the time Vern came into the business, there's tractors on every family farm. No need for harnesses anymore. Drive chains, which was one of our core values, they would have been done before the third generation even started. But the automobile industry was coming around. My grandfather, Vern, was actually rode on the first automobile that came through central Utah and Salina as part of a Boy Scout project. But everything was changing, so we adapted and we started making stock saddles for the ranchers in the area, started covering the tops of Model Ts, making leather accessories for vehicles and leather straps, and just really embraced what was happening and tailored our manufacturing. We found things that we could do in this new industry with the equipment we had. So they were very proactive about it, and they stopped making harnesses. We haven't made any harnesses since the early 1900s, and that went away, but they still found a resource for all their old equipment, their knowledge, and kept pushing forward. So later in Burns' career, automobiles were prevalent everywhere. Everyone had an automobile, and he saw one problem, that there was no good way to carry your loose products, maps and gun shells, firearms. They packed those a lot in the vehicles back then. So looking at that problem, he created a product. I think that's a great opportunity, and one thing we always look for is where's a problem in the industry and how can we solve it? Well, he did that. He created the pickpocket, and he had the patent for the collapsible storage pouch behind a vehicle until about 20 years ago. And this was a viable product that he created the first one, and then he went out on the road selling them. Eventually it grew to where they were selling hundreds, if not thousands, a week out of our little town of Salina all over the nation. And he really adapted to that change and grew the business. We still had our core and our roots. There was a saddle shop, a working saddle shop still, but this was a nice additional business that grew to really help stem the growth for the next generations. And then fourth generation, my grandparents. So they bought the business from Vern, from their father, after a career in the military. And at that time, there was a pickpocket still running as almost a separate business, and they had bought the saddle shop. And the saddle shop, we carried boots, but we were mainly making goods for the local people. So they would come in, want a saddle or a horse blanket, and we would make them. One thing we made was saddle blankets that would go under your saddle and on your horse's back. So my grandmother was sitting in the shop one day, and her great uncle came in and says, I need a piece of fabric. And the saddle blanket was the right size he needed, and it was for the bench of his bench pickup truck. And why did he need that? I thought, that seems weird. Well, back then, all the seats were covered with vinyl. So they were hot in the summer and cold in the winter. So again, there's a problem. And my grandmother, she had no industrial engineer training, but she had an imagination. And could think outside of the box and solve a problem. So she went to work on this problem and created the first saddle blanket seat cover. And she gave it to my great uncle, who worked at the dealership, at the local auto dealership. And the first 12 orders came in that day. So she knew she had something. Everyone really gravitated toward it. And that was because she listened to the customer and she thought outside of the box to solve a problem. He would have been content with just a blanket that laid across the seat. But by thinking outside of the box and thinking bigger, she was able to create a whole industry. They weren't making vehicle seat covers back then. So this created a whole new industry. And it really sustained Burns through the 70s into the late 90s and early 2000s. And that was our core product. And it went from those first 12 to selling to local dealerships to where they were shipping semi-loads out every week. And it really, one thing that came about from that is systems in our organization. So everything has to be scalable. If it stopped at how many my grandmother could make, we couldn't go very far. So we went from just her making some to quickly having 3 full-time shifts of sewers that basically run 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, and a whole distribution system. And back then there wasn't UPS and there wasn't FedEx. Their system was hanging flags outside on the road so the semis would know when to pick the stuff up. And they were actually instrumental in getting UPS into Utah, because they would go and tell them, you know, we have a broken system. We have to hang out flags, and sometimes people come and pick up products, sometimes they don't. And so one thing we learned from Donna and Dan as they grew this side of the business was that you need to make your system scalable so that you can replicate each part of the process multiple times if you want to grow quickly. And those same systems that they've adopted, we've tweaked a little bit, but they still carry into our saddle shop and our hat shop, and that's been a great benefit to the organization. Another lesson I learned from my grandparents was that, you know, that hard work and persistence. My grandmother was running this kind of chaotic, growing business at the time, managing hundreds of people and all this product that needs to go out. And in the middle of that, she had an 8-year-old son who was hit by a car and killed. And then her husband passed away shortly after, you know, at a young age. So she was maintaining all this and having to work through it, amid personal problems. But she stuck with it, and she worked, and she relied on those people around her. But she came to work every day, and she pushed through, and she is a great testament to resilience to us in the company. And we always lean on that strength when things get hard, and say, you know what, she got through all these hard times by just showing up and getting it done. So we take that into our culture now. It's really migrated into our culture. My grandfather, before he passed away, was a very generous man. So he made sure all the football fields had lights and all the local sports teams were well equipped. And to this day, I talk to customers in the store that come in and tell me a story about my grandfather and how they wanted a saddle when they were a young boy, but didn't have the money, so he gave them way too good of a deal and a lot of time to pay for it. But from that, 50 years later, they're loyal customers, and they still keep coming back. So that's one thing we have. We try to give back, and we understand that give as much as you can because it will come back to you. And I think that's a great lesson for any entrepreneur, is pull a little aside to help somebody else out, and it'll come back to you. So that was a great lesson for us. And we jump into the 5th generation, my parents. So Scott and Dana Shaw are my parents. So my mother took over the saddle shop and retail shop at a young age of 28 when my grandfather passed away. It was a predominantly male industry, so you know, she had to learn that mental toughness and how to negotiate deals and to make sure that the numbers matched up. And she has always been, she's our biggest deal maker. We have a lot of great collaborations going. We're, coming next year, we're providing the luxury cell phone cases for OtterBox. So we're doing a lot of things outside of the box, and we're working with a lot of big organizations, but it's through her deal making and her persistence to get us those opportunities. And that's one thing that I've really learned from her, is that you should attack everything and every opportunity like it's the biggest opportunity in the world. And that's for everything in life. If you go at every opportunity like it's the most important, you'll give it your best effort, and they don't all pan out. But realistically, it only takes one. So if you find that one right person in your life, or you find that one right business opportunity, it's worth it. And that's one thing that it's hard to teach and it's hard to train. We talk to a lot of our young people that are on the front lines, and some opportunities come their way and they blow them off. but they could have been huge if they would have just had some tenacity and attacked it and thought they were the biggest opportunity in the world, because they may have been. But too often we see people sit on the sidelines and let things pass, or they wait till the timing's just right, and the opportunity is gone. So if there's one thing I've learned from my mother is to, one of her sayings is the answer is always no if you don't ask. So she's not afraid to ask, and always attacks every opportunity with passion and enthusiasm. And that's some of the things that I've been fortunate to learn through my generations, and been fortunate to be raised in a family that promotes that entrepreneurial spirit, where we talk about those type of things, where they supported me at a young age. In Little League, I was buying illegal fireworks and selling them on the baseball field, but that was just always in our blood. You know, we were merchants, we sold stuff, and I was fortunate enough to learn that from a young age, and to see those examples and be raised in a shop that's kind of chaotic and always growing. And I'm fortunate for that. And I think that if all of us can, learn from those that have went before us and really grab hold of some of those lessons about hard work and determination, innovation, problem solving, being creative, and really just having a passion for what you're doing. It won't always be easy. I can attest to that. There's a lot of ups and downs, and it's not sunshines and rainbows. But if you keep pushing forward, you'll find something great at the other side. And I think that I've been able to see that in my own family. I've seen it work for me and with my family. And it's great to have that love and support when you're going through it. But if you don't have it, keep pushing through to your passions. And one thing that's become really evident in my life is it's not the major milestones, it's the small things every day. So if you have an idea and you want to pursue something, it doesn't cost much money to go get a pen and a paper and just write down your ideas, but keep doing little things every day to get there. You may not have the funding, you may not have the resources yet, but they'll come when you're ready. So take that opportunity to really write down your goals and just do little things every day. It doesn't have to be major, and then the big things will show up. There's no overnight success. There's a lot of hard work behind that. And that's one thing that I've learned as we've started these new companies and new adventures. And we're in a really upward growth pattern, so we've got a lot of things going on. And I say we're a 141-year-old company, but really right now we're 6 startups. And so everything's really new and aggressive. And I've been fortunate to have a good team that's passionate, that will get behind and work. And I know that I can count on them and look over and see them at 2 in the morning doing what will better the company. But to get to where we want to go, it takes that work. And that's what I hope, that everybody can find, that desire and passion in something where it doesn't matter when you're at 2:30 in the morning, you're still working on something you haven't, and you realize you haven't eaten. I think that's part of entrepreneurship, and it doesn't cost any money. So don't wait for that great opportunity or that funding source. It's definitely always important, and it's easier when you can find good financial partners, but do the little things to get prepared so when the money's there that you'll be ready. And like I said, I'm grateful for that heritage and what it's taught me. And I guess I'll open it up to any questions. If you guys have any questions about my family business or business in general that I might be able to answer. Yes?
So, what makes your saddles, you said you do like custom saddles, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what makes them different than the other custom saddle makers?
Okay, so what makes our saddles different than any of the other custom saddles out there? A lot of it deals with, comes from our clientele. We have uber sensitive clientele that are professional athletes, rodeo athletes that know their horse is sore before their horse knows it's sore. So they're really sensitive about fit and performance. And as we started dealing with that clientele, I'll admit at first it was really a pain, because they were, we're talking about 1/16 of an inch and 1 degree this way and 1 degree that way on the bar pattern, that I'm thinking that's really too specific. But as we've worked through that, we're able to create a really high quality product, and we now understand fit of horse better. We use only the best materials on the market. So fortunately, we've been in the leather business for 141 years, which is a small niche. So we are able to source the highest quality leathers on the market. We may not be the largest in volume, but we have relationships for upwards of hundreds of years with some of these tanneries. So we never scrimp on materials, and we have we're really passionate. We have a passionate sales staff and a passionate saddle foreman that is really passionate about putting out the best product and making the horse perform better to the best of its ability and the rider. So everything we do is custom, from the way it sets on the horse to the way it positions the rider. And there's all those small details I think makes the biggest difference. Yes?
Yeah, how have you identified your niche market?
So how we've identified our niche market, we really have two different lanes. The horseman that I spoke about, and it's not the recreational cowboy, if you will. It's the hardcore cowboy and cowgirl. So we really focus on what will make them perform better and their animals perform better. And then the opposite side is our resort model. And they don't cross over at all. It's totally different clientele. So we're selling to high net worth individuals in these resort towns that are on vacation. And honestly, what we're selling is the spirit of the West. There's nobody that walks into one of our retail stores, resort stores, that needs anything we have or knew that they were going to buy anything that we have when they walk in. So we're really experience-based company. So we tell the story, we talk about the quality, but our clientele really appreciates the quality. And it's easy because all we're selling is the spirit of the West. And you don't have to be a cowboy to appreciate the spirit of the West. Because the spirit of the West is just people moved out and were seeking a better life. So they worked hard and they went out and made a name for themselves. And most of our clientele can attach to that and that kind of legacy. And that's really what the American cowboy did. So we find that core group, that core customer that appreciates quality. Most of our biggest clients and best collectors are uber successful in business or finance, and they have a lot of disposable income. They appreciate the art of it, and they appreciate what the meaning of is a lot of the product. A cowboy boot is a hardy piece of footwear, and it was built to last, and it was built for a specific purpose. Same with a lot of the cowboy memorabilia. So it's two totally different clienteles. And our resort, like I spoke to, our resort stores are in two unique areas, you think, for cowboy stuff. Park City, which is a mountain and a ski town, and Carmel, California, which is Pebble Beach, is all golfing. But so we really target where high net worth individuals have second homes, where they vacation. We actually went to Carmel, California to sell the Texans. Most of the affluent Texas oil guys have second homes in Carmel. So we knew that they attached to our product already. And then we were selling it to them in an environment to where they're in vacation mode. So their pocketbooks is a little more free than it normally would be. And that's kind of how we went about our two core models. Anybody else? Yeah, go.
What are some ways your parents raised you to get you ready to benefit the Burns Company?
Yeah, so my parents, some things that my parents did to raise me to become a leader in the Burns Company, I think a lot of it was really just being a good example of the hard work. As Alan mentioned, I started as a young age, and my first job in the retail store was to dust all the products. So I went through it, I dusted everything in the store, which my kids would complain about now, so I got to do a better job. But I went through and dusted everything, and I came back and it says, okay, I'm done. She's like, well, how much is that? And I didn't think about, oh, well, this is a good learning opportunity. So I went back and I redusted everything, and I looked at the price of everything. And by the time I was in my late teens, and if I was working on the sales floor, I knew off the top of my head, we had thousands of SKUs. I knew the price of everything. So I think that just being hands-on with me in the business really helped. So I was able to see the ups and the downs and experience that as part of the family business and be part of the talks and negotiations and things that went on at a young age. So I think that just exposure helped me. And then setting an example of work ethic. We're all going to make mistakes, but they've always been supportive. If I've done some things that, like we all have, and messed up sections of the business, but everyone's supportive and hey, we can fix this and we'll get past it. And I think that was really a benefit to me, showing that hard work, but then also helped me grow and make my own mistakes. Anyone else?
Of
Alan?
all of the different lines that you have right now, from the magazine to the events, and including all of them, and the one that you recently acquired, which one do you see growing the most, right, in the near future?
So we're actually there. Glad you mentioned that. Which area of the business do we see growing the fastest or have the most opportunity? And I think strategically, these are all pieces of a puzzle for more growth in more urban areas. So we had a shop in Newport Beach, California, also another weird place for cowboy stuff, but high net worth clientele. And it was really our first shot at urban retail, like taking our story to the masses. Because on the luxury side, our story is really similar to some of those high-end luxury brands. We're just untapped right now. Like we have a similar story to Hermes and Louis Vuitton and things like that. So there's a lot of that heritage and similar path. So that was where we struck out to do, and we thought we could make it in a mall setting. And what we quickly realized, we had that store and it was operational and did great gross sales, but we were paying a lot in rent. Most of everything we were doing was going back to the landlord. We did make a lot of great connections, but what we realized being in that setting is we didn't have the margins to sustain that type of retail environment. We were used to our normal margins and sometimes being the middleman and not having a vertical position. So a lot of these things that we've acquired are items that are in our resort retail store, but we were outsourcing them from another manufacturer. So we're acquiring different pieces of a brand that will be able to sustain itself and have the margins and a vertical position to expand and grow. So really all of them together, they'll all kind of grow together. There's a couple more components that we need to add, but then once they become a whole package, it's easier to be scaled. We're not relying on a footwear vendor or something. We create our own destiny. So they're all we're optimistic about all of them growing together, but definitely the resort side of our business has our biggest emphasis right now as far as growth. It's our biggest opportunity. Anybody else? Yes. Yeah.
Your question, what's your favorite, leather or material for your cowboy boots?
All right. So what's my favorite cowboy boot? I'm an alligator guy for sure. That's what I like the best. I think it's the most comfortable. It's soft. It's really durable. And it's hard to come by. It's one of the highest priced leathers on the market by centimeter if you buy it the way we buy it. We buy in all grade 1 or grade A skins, which has no blemishes or tick marks or anything like that. So that's definitely my favorite. Some of the hardest leather we have to get in the source is hippopotamus, because it all dies in the wild of natural causes and then is sourced. And that's one thing that you would think, we're in the leather business. You'd think maybe we would catch some static from different organizations that are anti that. But the nice thing about everything we do is a byproduct of food. So there's not one piece of skin that we use that's not a byproduct of food and in our footwear or our saddles. So it really would be waste. So it's kind of recycling, or if you will. Another question? Yeah.
What's the favorite hat design?
So favorite hat design. I'm traditional, so traditional cattleman is like what I like to shape and the only thing I really wear. I had the opportunity to create, which will be this October, participate in what's called a fusion show. So it's a collaborative show where you have a hat maker mixed with a leathersmith or a silversmith, and they create a product. So we were able to create a really awesome hat. If you look it up, it's on Fusion Show and Sell. It's actually live. You can buy it there. It's only $7,500. So, but it's really it kind of pays homage to our history. It's a cool flat open crown hat with a three-dimensional live oak tree made out of leather, which one of our head saddle makers made. A root system underneath, and it really kind of talks about having strong roots and withering the storm, and it has 14 karat gold leaves that are kind of sprinkled across the hat. So doing those things are really fun. That's my release. So that's my, everything I do is really left brain 90% of the time, but I get to spend some late nights in the hat shop and really kind of exercise the right brain side. And that's what I love about this business, and being an entrepreneur is not the same day to day. One more.
So every entrepreneur has some like failure and success stories. Do you think like it's healthy to share everything with customers, like to be honest? Is honesty like a healthy tool for marketing to your products?
Yeah, I think that is. There's a lot of things that we've done in our past that haven't been successful. I wouldn't say they're failures because we didn't give up. I think it's only a failure if you stop. You know, if it makes you stop, then you failed. But if you push past it and you learn, then it's a learning tool. But I do think it's like that's all part of our story. You know, we've opened up a couple of retail locations that just weren't right, and they weren't successful. We closed them within 2 to 5 years, and so I think that is, as we're an open book, and I think honesty is always a great policy. Whether you're, you know, sometimes when I was working on the retail shop and we had a product not come in for a customer, it's easy to maybe tell them a white lie on the phone and say, oh, well, blame it on somebody else. But I know that people appreciate it a lot more if you just own up to it and say, hey, we made a mistake, and this is how we're going to help you through it. And oftentimes after that, they're going to feel good about it. They become loyal because you're straight up with them. So I think honesty is always the best policy. Last one in the back.
So you said that you have all these different companies. How did you figure out how to balance your time between 6 companies? I mean, not only 80 hours a week, but that's between 6 companies. So how do you balance your time?
So how do I balance my time between the different organizations? Honestly, I spend a lot of time in developing systems for the new ventures. So I'll spend a lot of my time there, and it's really hands-on for a large amount of time until somebody gets trained up, and then it'll be more checking in and really empowering them. So like the resort retail, I have a great buddy I went to school with and started working with us, and he oversees all of those operations, and I know that he'll take care of them to the best of his ability. So finding those key people really help, and then really focusing my energies and efforts on the processes that need to be tweaked or maybe a little broken, and that's where I spend most of my time. So it is really fun because I get to bounce around and do a bunch of different things if something gets a little monotonous. But all right, well, thanks for hearing me out.